Most people think their life changes because of one big decision. But that is rarely true. Most people lose their future in quieter ways. Not through one dramatic failure. Not through one visible collapse. But through a sentence they keep repeating until it becomes familiar. A sentence that sounds wise. A sentence that feels protective. A sentence that turns fear into patience, delay into maturity, and comfort into something that almost looks like peace. Maybe you know that sentence. You feel the weight of a life you have not built yet. You wake up tired before the day begins. You scroll through people who seem ahead of you, and something inside you tightens. You tell yourself they had better timing, better confidence, better support, better discipline. And while the world keeps moving, you keep explaining why you are still in the same place. But the invisible problem is not that you lack potential. The invisible problem is that you may have become loyal to the wrong story. A lie does not need to sound evil to destroy you. Sometimes it sounds reasonable. Sometimes it sounds gentle. Sometimes it sounds exactly like your own voice. And if you keep believing it, one day you will not be shocked by failure. You will be shocked by how much life passed while you were preparing to live. So this is not just about motivation. This is about identity. This is about the private stories that keep you trapped. Because once you recognize the lie clearly, you are no longer the same person who believed it blindly. And the first lie is the one most people use before they ever begin. Number 1. I'm not ready yet. The journey out of self-deception begins with a sentence that sounds harmless, but quietly keeps your life standing at the edge of its own possibility. You have said it before starting something important, before applying, before creating, before speaking up, before changing your habits, before taking the first step toward the version of yourself you keep imagining in silence. I'm not ready yet. It feels intelligent when you say it. Feels careful. Feels like maturity. You tell yourself you are not quitting. You are simply waiting until your mind is clearer, your skills are sharper, your confidence is stronger, your timing is better. But beneath that sentence, something else may be hiding. Fear. Not the loud kind of fear that makes your heart race. The quiet kind. The kind that puts on a calm voice and calls itself preparation. The kind that convinces you to research more, think more, plan more, watch more, wait more. The kind that keeps you near the door, but never lets you walk through it. The hidden problem is that you are treating readiness like a feeling that must arrive before action. But readiness is often not something you feel first. Readiness is something built through contact with difficulty. A swimmer does not become ready for the water by staring at the waves. A musician does not become ready by protecting the instrument from imperfect sound. A person does not become courageous by waiting until fear disappears. You become ready by entering the thing that makes you feel unready. And that creates the conflict. Because part of you wants growth, but another part of you wants to avoid exposure. You do not only fear failing. You fear being seen while you are still becoming. You fear the awkward beginning, the clumsy attempt, the early version of your work that does not match the vision in your mind. So you wait until you can begin without embarrassment. But that moment never comes. Every meaningful beginning asks you to be seen before you are impressive. It asks you to cross the gap between who you are and who you claim you want to become. And that gap is where most people turn back, not because they are incapable, but because they cannot tolerate being a beginner. Imagine someone standing before a dark forest. On the other side is the life they want. A stronger body, a disciplined mind, a clearer purpose, a future they can respect. They hold a map, but the map is incomplete. So they wait for the rest of it. They wait for daylight. They wait for someone to confirm the path. They wait for the fear to leave. Years pass. The forest remains dark. And eventually, they convince themselves the dream was unrealistic, when the truth is far more painful. They were not waiting for readiness. They were waiting for certainty. But certainty is not the price of admission to a better life. Action is. The shift begins when you stop asking, "Am I ready?" and start asking, "What would the ready version of me do first?" Not perfectly, not publicly, not dramatically. First, one page, one call, one workout, one honest conversation, one focused hour. One decision that proves fear can sit in the room without being allowed to lead the meeting. That is how self-respect begins. Not as a feeling, as evidence. Every small act becomes proof that you are not the same person who needs permission from fear. Every uncomfortable step becomes a vote for a new identity. And slowly, you stop waiting for confidence because you are building the kind of life that produces it. There is a future version of you who will not remember whether you felt ready. They will only remember whether you began. But once this first lie starts to crack, another one appears. Softer, more comforting, less frightening on the surface. It does not tell you not to start. It simply whispers that there is no urgency. Number 2. I still have plenty of time. Once fear loses its disguise as preparation, it often returns wearing the mask of patience. This lie feels peaceful. It does not shout. It relaxes you. It says there is no rush. You can begin later. You can change later. You can become serious later. There will be another morning, another month, another year, another version of life where everything finally feels easier. And because delay does not punish you immediately, the lie feels true. You postpone the habit. You leave the dream untouched. You delay the difficult conversation. You tell yourself that when your schedule becomes lighter, when your emotions become steadier, when your situation becomes clearer, then you will finally move. But time has a quiet cruelty. It does not announce what it is taking. It does not arrive like a thief in the night. It leaves like dust in the sunlight. Slowly, silently, almost beautifully. And then one day you look around and realize that the goal is still written in the same notebook. The same promise is still waiting. The same version of you is still explaining why now is not the moment. That is when the lie begins to hurt, because somewhere deep inside you know the truth. Time is passing whether you respect it or waste it. The hidden problem is not that you believe you have time. The hidden problem is that you believe time itself will transform you. But time does not change people automatically. Time only reveals what they repeatedly choose. A seed left in a drawer for 10 years does not become a tree because years have passed. It remains a seed, protected, untouched, full of potential, but still not rooted in reality. Many people live like that seed. They protect their potential so carefully that it never has to meet the weather. This creates a painful conflict. You do not want to panic. You do not want to live under constant pressure. You do not want to turn your life into a race you never agreed to run. But you also know there is a difference between peace and avoidance. Peace gives you strength. Avoidance gives you anesthesia. There is a difference between patience and passivity. Patience is when you act consistently without demanding immediate results. Passivity is when you do nothing and call it timing. One builds a future. The other slowly buries one. Picture a person sitting in an old train station at night. They are holding a ticket to somewhere important. The train arrives. The doors open. The lights glow against the dark platform. But the person says, "Not this one. I'll take the next." At first, there is always another train. So the choice feels small. Another train arrives. Then another. Then another. Each time they stay on the bench. Not because they do not want the destination, but because the bench has become familiar. It asks nothing of them. It does not test them. It does not expose them. Then one night, the station becomes quiet, and they realize the tragedy was never that no train came. The tragedy was that they kept choosing the bench. This is what wasted time looks like while it is happening. It rarely feels dramatic. It feels like comfort. It feels like rest. Feels like being reasonable, until comfort has collected years from you and left you with explanations instead of memories. But urgency does not have to mean anxiety. Real urgency is focused. It is not panic. It is respect. It is the understanding that your life is finite, and because it is finite, your choices matter. It says, I do not need to destroy myself with pressure, but I do need to stop treating my days like they are disposable. That kind of urgency wakes you up. It makes ordinary hours sacred. It makes the next decision feel alive. It reminds you that your future is not hiding in some faraway season. It is being assembled right now, in the invisible choices you make when no one is watching. Imagine waking tomorrow with reverence for the day. Not fear. Not desperation. Reverence. You waste less of yourself on things that leave you emptier. You stop assuming that future you will magically have more courage than present you. You stop handing tomorrow the responsibility that belongs to today. Because future you is not a stranger. Future you is being trained by present you. And once that becomes clear, the next lie becomes harder to ignore. Because when you realize time will not save you, your mind may reach for something more beautiful, more hopeful, more emotionally comforting. It may turn the dream itself into a hiding place. If these ideas are resonating with you, consider leaving a like or sharing your thoughts below. Someone reading your reflection may be fighting the same quiet battle and needing words they could not find alone. And if you want to stay close to reminders that bring you back to growth, subscribing simply keeps these conversations within reach. Number 3. One day my life will change. After time loses its power as an excuse, the dream itself can become the next place where avoidance hides. This lie sounds hopeful. It gives you something to hold when life feels heavy. You imagine a better future, a stronger mind, a body you respect, a career that gives you purpose, a home that feels peaceful, a version of yourself who wakes up with direction, moves with confidence, and no longer feels trapped by the same old patterns. And hope matters. But there is a version of hope that strengthens you, and there is a version of hope that quietly replaces responsibility. One day my life will change does not sound like quitting. That is why it is dangerous. It lets you keep believing without requiring you to keep building. It allows you to emotionally visit the future without paying the price of entering it. You picture the transformation so vividly that for a moment, it feels like progress. You feel inspired. You feel moved. You feel like something inside has shifted. But when the feeling fades, the same habits are waiting. The same room. The same distractions. The same unfinished promises. The dream was real, but the bridge was missing. The hidden problem is that imagination can give you the emotional reward of change before your behavior has changed at all. And when that reward arrives too early, it can make you passive. You begin to love the image of your future more than the process required to reach it. That is where the conflict begins. You do not want to stop dreaming because the dream gives your life oxygen. But you also do not want to admit that your daily actions may not be leading there. So you keep the dream distant. You call it one day because today would ask for evidence. One day is safe. Today is accountable. One day allows you to remain emotionally attached to a future you are not actively constructing. Today asks what you will do before the night comes. Today asks what pattern you will interrupt. Today asks whether your dream is strong enough to survive contact with discipline. Imagine a farmer standing in an empty field at sunrise. He imagines the harvest in perfect detail. Golden rows, full baskets, pride in his family's eyes. He talks about the field with passion. He studies farming. He watches other farmers. He tells everyone that one day his land will be full. But he never plants. At the end of the season, the field is still empty. Not because the soil hated him. Not because the weather conspired against him. Not because destiny rejected his dream. The field simply reflected what was planted. Nothing. Life is the same. It does not respond to intention alone. It responds to repeated investment. It responds to what you water, protect, practice, and return to after the emotion disappears. The perspective shift is simple, but it cuts deep. Your life will not change one day. Your life changes on the day you change your relationship with today. Not everything at once. Not every problem solved. Not every wound healed. Just one pattern interrupted. One excuse denied. One action taken while the old identity protests. That is commitment. Commitment is not a dramatic feeling. It is the moment the dream stops being a place to escape and becomes a set of instructions. It is the moment you stop using the future as entertainment and start treating it as something you are responsible for feeding. Ask yourself honestly, what part of my future am I proving today? That question brings the dream down from the clouds and places it in your hands. It turns fantasy into responsibility. It makes the future less romantic, but more reachable. Imagine yourself 3 months from now. Your life may not look completely different yet, but something inside you has changed. You no longer speak about one day with helpless longing. You speak about the next step with ownership. Your dream has fingerprints on it now. Your fingerprints. And that changes the way you carry yourself. You begin to trust yourself, not because everything is finished, but because something finally began. But once commitment enters the story, another challenge appears. The first steps may feel powerful. They may even feel inspiring. Then the emotion fades. The old heaviness returns. Your mind gets tired. Your body resists. And the next lie waits for you there. Number 4. I need more motivation. This is where momentum is either built with quiet discipline or buried beneath another search for the perfect feeling. This lie feels convincing because some days you really do feel empty. You wake up and there is no fire in your chest. No dramatic clarity. No sudden burst of energy. Just heaviness. Your room feels still. Your mind feels scattered. The tasks in front of you feel larger than they are. You know what should be done, but knowing does not move your body. So you wait. You wait to feel motivated. You watch something inspiring. You save a quote. You make a new plan. You tell yourself that once the feeling returns, action will become easier. And sometimes it does return. For a few hours. Maybe a day. You feel awake again. You promise yourself this time will be different. Then the feeling leaves. And because your progress was built on emotion, progress leaves with it. The hidden problem is that motivation was never designed to carry the weight of your entire future. Motivation is unstable by nature. It visits. It does not move in. It is like sunlight through a window, beautiful when it appears, but unreliable as the foundation of a house. If your future depends on feeling inspired, then your future is being managed by weather. And weather changes. This creates a painful conflict because when motivation disappears, you begin to judge yourself. You say, maybe I do not want it badly enough. You say, maybe I am lazy. You turn a temporary emotional state into a permanent identity. But the absence of motivation is not proof that you are weak. It is proof that you are human. The real question is not whether you can act when you feel inspired. Almost anyone can. The real question is whether your life has a structure that can carry you when inspiration is silent. That structure is not glamorous. It is not exciting. But it is the difference between someone who depends on emotional waves and someone who learns how to build a ship. Discipline is often misunderstood. People imagine it as punishment, harshness, forcing yourself through life with clenched teeth. But real discipline is not self-hatred. It is self-protection. It is the architecture that prevents your future from collapsing every time your emotions shift. Discipline is the quiet promise that your tired self does not get to destroy what your clear self decided mattered. Think of a lighthouse standing on a violent coast. The sea crashes against the rocks. Fog covers the horizon. The night is cold. No one applauds. No one encourages it. But the lighthouse does not wait to feel inspired before shining. Its purpose is built into its structure. Storm or silence, it sends the signal. Your habits must become like that. Not loud. Reliable. The perspective shift is to stop asking, how do I get motivated? And begin asking, how do I make action possible when motivation is gone? That question changes everything. Prepare the room before the battle. Make the first step smaller. Remove friction. Put the shoes where you can see them. Place the book on the desk. Block the distraction before the craving arrives. Choose the time before your tired mind begins negotiating. Do not wait until resistance appears to decide who you are. The tired mind is a brilliant lawyer for weakness. So decide before it starts arguing. Momentum is built when action becomes less dependent on emotional permission. When you learn to do the small thing even while feeling ordinary. When you stop needing the perfect mood to keep a promise. When you understand that a low-energy day does not have to become a lost day. This is where self-trust begins to deepen. Because every time you act without motivation, you send a message to your identity. I can count on myself even when it is inconvenient. Imagine yourself 6 months from now. You still have tired days. You still have resistance. But the panic is gone. You no longer interpret a lack of motivation as a crisis. You know what to do. You have a rhythm. You have a system. You have become someone whose future is no longer held hostage by mood. That kind of person becomes difficult to defeat. But as momentum grows, another lie starts to reveal itself. It appears when you look at people ahead of you, people who seem more disciplined, more confident, more successful. And if you are not careful, comparison will twist your vision until their progress feels like proof of your limitation. Number 5. Successful people are different. Sometimes the greatest obstacle is not your lack of effort, but the story you tell yourself when you see someone else winning. This lie feels realistic. You look at people who have built something meaningful, and they seem separate from ordinary life. They speak with confidence. They move with certainty. They create, decide, lead, endure. Their life appears to carry a momentum you cannot imagine having. So the mind creates distance. It says they were born different. They had more talent, more discipline, more courage, better parents, better timing, better connections, clearer path, a stronger personality. And some differences may be real. But the lie begins when you use those differences to excuse your own inaction. The hidden problem is not comparison itself. Comparison can teach you, can reveal what is possible, can point toward standards you have not yet built. The hidden problem is the meaning you attach to comparison. When you see someone ahead, do you see evidence that growth is possible? Or proof that you do not belong there? That interpretation becomes an environment inside your mind. If successful people are fundamentally different, then your current habits become destiny. Your weaknesses become permanent. Your past becomes a prison. Your lack of confidence becomes identity instead of a condition that can change. But if successful people are built, not born complete, then your life is not a verdict. It is raw material. And that realization creates discomfort because the moment you admit that success may be built through repeated choices, you lose the comfort of believing it has nothing to do with you. You can no longer admire from a safe distance. You have to study. You have to ask what they practiced that you avoided, what they protected that you wasted, what standards they kept when no one was watching. That question removes the romance from success. It reveals the scaffolding. We often compare our beginning to someone else's evidence. We see the finished building and forget it was once noise, dust, mistakes, and unfinished rooms. We see the confident speaker and forget the first trembling sentence. We see the strong body and forget the early mornings when no one noticed. We see the successful creator and forget the ignored work, the rejected attempts, the private doubt. Visible success is only the surface. The invisible years are where identity is forged. Imagine walking into a museum after closing. The halls are silent. A single statue stands beneath a soft beam of light. It looks perfect, smooth, powerful, inevitable. You stare at it and think the artist must have possessed something magical. But that statue began as a block of stone. It became beautiful through impact. Hammer strikes, dust, repeated contact, pieces removed, form discovered slowly. There were moments when it did not look like art at all. Just damage, just noise, just a mess on the floor. The statue was not different from the stone at the beginning. It was treated differently. That is the perspective shift. The people you admire are not proof that you are excluded. They may be evidence of what repeated shaping can produce. Not because everyone begins with the same advantages. They do not. Some roads are harder. Some people carry burdens others never had to name. But a harder road is not the same as a closed road. And a difficult beginning is not the same as a finished story. Transformation begins when admiration becomes instruction. Instead of asking, "Why am I not like them?" ask, "What can their life teach me about what I must build?" That question turns envy into education. It removes poison from comparison. It changes the environment inside your mind from silent inferiority to active learning. Imagine looking at successful people without shrinking. You no longer worship them. You no longer resent them. You observe them. You decode them. You take what is useful. You let their progress expand your sense of possibility instead of reducing your sense of worth. That is an environment shift. And once you stop using other people's success as evidence against yourself, you become more willing to try. But trying carries a price. You will not always succeed. You will fall short. You will be misunderstood. You will produce work that is not good yet. And then the next lie comes directly for your identity. Number 6. Failure means I'm not good enough. After comparison loses its grip, the real test begins when life hands you evidence that you are not as strong, skilled, or prepared as you hoped. This lie does not feel like a thought. It feels like a wound. You try something and it does not work. You give effort and the result disappoints you. You speak and your voice shakes. You create and no one responds. You apply and get rejected. You start a habit and break it. You put hope into something and it collapses in your hands. And suddenly the failure stops being an event. It becomes a mirror. Not that attempt failed. I failed. Not this method needs work. I am not enough. This is where many people stop growing. Not because failure defeated them, but because they misunderstood it. They allowed one result to become a sentence over their identity. They treated a bruise like a prophecy. The hidden problem is that people often do not fear failure itself. They fear what failure might reveal. They fear that if they try fully and still fall short, the insecurity they have carried for years might be confirmed. Maybe they are not talented, not disciplined, not smart, not chosen, not capable. So they avoid the test to protect the fantasy. As long as they do not try fully, they can still imagine they might have succeeded. This creates a painful inner conflict. You want confidence, but confidence requires evidence. You want evidence, but evidence requires attempts. Attempts create the possibility of failure. And failure threatens the fragile story you are trying to protect about who you might be. So you hover. You prepare, but do not commit. You dream, but do not risk. You work, but not fully. You leave yourself an escape route so if things go wrong, you can say, I did not really try. That escape route protects your ego, but it destroys your future. Because the version of you who becomes strong cannot be built in a life where you never risk being seen as weak. The perspective shift is this. Failure is not a verdict on your worth. It is feedback on your current approach. It does not say, you are not good enough. It says, this part needs training. It says, this assumption was incomplete. It says, this skill has not matured yet. It says, the next version of you needs better information. That word matters. Yet, a child learning to walk falls constantly. No one watches a child fall and declares that walking is not meant for them. The fall is understood as part of the process. It is almost sacred. Every stumble is the nervous system learning balance. But adults become cruel to themselves. They fall once and call it fate. They try once without mastery and call it proof. They forget that everything meaningful begins with incompetence. Imagine a blacksmith in a dark workshop. Metal is placed into fire, not because it is worthless, but because it can be shaped. The hammer strikes are not punishment. They are formation. The heat is not destruction. It is the condition that makes transformation possible. Failure is that heat, but only if you remain in the process long enough to be shaped by it. This is identity transformation. Not pretending failure does not hurt. It does hurt. Rejection hurts. Embarrassment hurts. Disappointment hurts. But pain does not have to become identity. Pain can become information. Pain can become humility. Pain can become skill. The difference is interpretation. Some people extract shame from failure. Others extract direction. And over time, that difference becomes destiny. Transformation begins when you stop asking, what does this failure prove about me? And begin asking, what is this failure preparing in me? That question returns power to your hands. It turns the broken attempt into a map. It teaches you to look at your wounds without making a home inside them. Imagine your future self looking back at the failures you once feared. Some will become stories you tell calmly. Some will become the exact moments that sharpened you. Some will become closed doors you are grateful for because they forced you to find a better one. But you will never discover that if you quit at the first bruise. And once failure no longer defines you, the final lie becomes impossible to ignore. It is the lie underneath all the others. The one that waits beneath fear, delay, comparison, and shame. The one that says you cannot move until someone else arrives with certainty. Number 7. Someone will show me the way. This final shift changes everything because it takes your life out of the hands of an imaginary rescuer and places it back into your own. This lie begins in a very human place. You are tired of guessing, tired of making decisions alone, tired of carrying confusion while everyone else seems to know where they are going. You want a mentor, a sign, a map, a person who looks at your life and says, "This is the path. Walk here. Avoid that. Trust me." There is nothing wrong with wanting guidance. Guidance can be valuable. A book can open your mind. A mentor can shorten your learning curve. A conversation can change the direction of your life. But the danger begins when guidance becomes a substitute for ownership. Because no one can live the deciding moment for you. No one can enter your fear and move your feet. No one can build your discipline while you remain absent from your own life. No one can hand you self-respect if you keep abandoning yourself in the moments that matter. The hidden problem is that waiting for someone to show you the way can feel humble, but sometimes it is avoidance. You are not waiting because there is no path. You are waiting because choosing a path makes you responsible for what happens next. As long as you are confused, you can delay. As long as you are waiting, you can blame absence. No mentor, no support, no opportunity, no clear direction, no perfect sign. But life does not always hand you a map. Sometimes it hands you a compass. And the compass only starts working when you move. This creates the final internal conflict. You want certainty before responsibility. But growth often works in the opposite direction. You take responsibility first, and clarity appears through contact with reality. A person standing in fog cannot see the whole road. But if they take 10 steps, new ground appears. Then 10 more. Then the outline of the path begins to reveal itself. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But enough. And enough is all you need to begin. Imagine a ship at sea before sunrise. The water is black. The horizon is missing. The captain cannot see the destination. He has instruments, wind, pressure, instinct, and a narrow field of movement. If he waits for the whole ocean to become visible, the ship remains trapped. So he moves. He adjusts. He learns the sea by sailing. Your life is not meant to be solved from the shore. It is meant to be navigated. That is the perspective shift. No one is coming to hand you a perfect script for your existence. And this is not a punishment. It is an invitation. Because the path that transforms you cannot be completely outsourced. It must pass through your decisions, your mistakes, your corrections, your courage, your willingness to stay present when the outcome is uncertain. Guidance can help you, but ownership will save you. You do not need to know the entire way to become responsible for the next step. You do not need universal approval to choose better. You do not need someone to believe in you before you begin acting like your life matters. Sometimes the guide you are waiting for is born through the act of guiding yourself. That is personal power. Not loud, not arrogant, not pretending to have every answer. Personal power is the quiet moment when you stop abandoning yourself. When you stop outsourcing your direction to people who may never arrive. When you stop living like a passenger in a story that requires your hands on the wheel. Imagine waking up tomorrow and no longer searching the room for someone to save you. You still learn. You still listen. You still accept help. But something fundamental has changed. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You choose responsibility. And when that happens, you begin noticing the small lights that were already available. The book you can read. The the skill you can practice, the debt you can begin paying, the room you can clean, the apology you can make, the body you can care for, the plan you can write, the truth you can finally admit. The way appears to the person who moves. And now the 7 lies begin to connect. You were not waiting because you were broken. You were waiting because a part of you believed delay was safer than responsibility. You said you were not ready because starting would expose you. You said you had plenty of time because urgency felt uncomfortable. You said one day life would change because dreaming was easier than planting. You said you needed motivation because structure demanded commitment. You said successful people were different because comparison gave you distance. You said failure meant you were not good enough because shame felt more familiar than learning. You said someone would show you the way because ownership felt too heavy to carry alone. But now you can see it. The lie was never one sentence. It was a system. A quiet system designed to protect you from discomfort while slowly stealing your future. And this is the moment where the story can change. Not because you suddenly become fearless. Not because life becomes simple. Not because every wound disappears. But because you no longer need the lie to survive. You can look at your fear without obeying it. You can look at time without wasting it. You can look at your dream without escaping into it. You can act without motivation. You can study success without worshiping it. You can fail without collapsing. You can move without waiting to be rescued. That is not a small thing. That is the beginning of self-respect. The life you want is not hidden behind some impossible version of you. It is hidden behind repeated moments where you choose truth over comfort. And every time you do, something inside you becomes more solid, more honest, more alive. One day you will look back at the person you are right now. The person who was uncertain. The person who was tired. The person who almost postponed their life again. And you will either feel sadness because you kept believing the lie, or gratitude because this was the day you stopped. So do not wait for the perfect feeling. Do not wait for the perfect sign. Do not wait for someone to name your potential before you start respecting it. Your future is not asking for a dramatic promise. It is asking for your next honest action. Because the moment you stop lying to yourself is the moment your real life finally begins. If this message stayed with you, share one lie you are ready to stop believing in the comments. Your honesty may become the sentence someone else needed today. And if you are committed to growth, subscribe and stay close to reminders that help you choose progress when comfort tries to pull you back.